My name is Ed Clendenin. I'm the historian for the 376 Heavy Bombardment Group. It's September 4th, 2010, and we're here in Albuquerque, New Mexico at their 376 Veterans Association annual reunion. And with me today is your name.
I'm Albert Hintenach.
You were with the 376?
Yes, 515th Squadron.
And what was your capacity with them?
As a pilot of Round Trip Harry.
Of Round Trip Harry. That was the nose art name on your plane?
That was the main. We named the plane after our ground crew maintenance because every time we took a mission, we always returned.
Ah, good.
We had to give the ground maintenance their
credit.
Considered credit, correct.
Okay. Well, let's kind of start at the beginning. Where were you and what were you doing on December 7th, 1941?
I was working at the Glenelg Martin Company.
So you were an aeronautical engineer?
No, I was in the tool design department.
I see. And so what did you, how was your reaction when you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Just another an episode. We didn't think much of it until one day going to work. It was a nice day, sunny day, and we didn't feel like going to work, so we said, let's go down to the fellow I was riding with. We decided to go down and enlist in the Air Force.
And when was that?
That was in 42.
42, early 42, middle 42?
That's right, early 42. And at that time, of course, they said you had to have 2 years of college. Well, I didn't have 2 years of college. Only had, I was going to college, and according to the school, the studies that we had put us in the second year of MIT. So they figured that was good enough, and they give us naturally the test, mathematical test, and so on. And I passed it. The fellow I was riding with didn't pass it.
So did you select the Army Air Corps, or did they pick it for you?
No, I selected it.
And did you want to be a pilot from when you first started?
Of course, yes, of course.
So I assume you went through all the various tests to become a pilot?
Well, yes, the first assignment was Montgomery, Alabama, Maxwell Air Force Base. And went through the boot camp, of course, that they had there. And that's where I found out what SOS was.
Which is?
That's, well, the cream beef was given to us.
Uh-huh.
And when we got it, of course, they'd make it in the morning. And when we got it in the afternoon, it was all sour.
I see.
So consequently,
this is something on a shingle?
That's right.
I see. So when did you go to flight training?
From there, we went to Decatur, Alabama. That was they were flying, I guess, Stearmans. Mm-hmm. And we went through the studies there. And after we graduated from that, then the assignment was Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. We were the first class, 43B.
At Walnut Ridge?
At Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. And I can remember when, of course, I had my wife with me then. And I can remember the first time we arrived at Walnut Ridge, Arkansas. It was just like going into some of these western towns that you see on the movies. You walk and you go into the barber shop, you get a haircut, and if you wanted to go and have a bath, you can go in the back.
Oh.
You almost expect to see somebody walking through the two guns in their hip. But it was Walnut Ridge, Arkansas was swampy, but the government, they had a runway there. And you made damn sure you didn't get off the runway because you'd sink into the mud. Mm. But anyhow, after that, we were flying, let's see, the I've forgotten the names of B-15. No, it was I've forgotten the names.
Still single seat?
Yes, fighter. And then after that, we were assigned to Blytheville, Arkansas, where they were flying AT-10s and AT-9s. And the story we got from the room, well, when we get to twin engines, the AT-9s, they were supposed to train us to get a little bit of training in towards the B-26, the Martin B-26. But of course, we didn't know what we were going to get. Although that's what I wanted. I wanted one was the Martin B-26 because I was working on it at the Martin Company. So after we graduated from there, our assignment was Salt Lake City. And what the heck's up Salt Lake City? Well, we drove up, of course, and Salt Lake City was just a reassignment center. They reassigned us to Tucson, Arizona, and you walked down there and you walked in to see this monstrous airplane. You see the control board, instrument board. How do you fly this thing?
So this was your first time you saw a B-24?
Yes.
I see.
In those days, you didn't have much choice because they went where they needed pilots.
So they told you you're going to go fly a B-24?
Didn't tell me anything. We didn't know it until we got there.
Until you got to Tucson?
That's right.
And when was this approximately?
This was in, let's see, I graduated in 43B. It was about, February, I guess about March, April.
So in the spring of 43, you're in Tucson looking at your first B-24.
That's correct.
Now, were you part of a crew yet, or were you just still a single?
No, we didn't get our crew until after we arrived at Tucson. Then we started getting selections that they gave me. The first co-pilot they gave me was, he didn't stay long. I don't know why they moved him out. Then they started giving you the crews, the armament, the gunners, and so on. And then they stayed with us, and from there on, they stayed with us wherever we were assigned.
And from that point on, you started training as a crew?
That's right.
I see.
And of course, there's one unusual factor about it. After we finished our training at Tucson, they sent us to Biggs Field. That's outside of El Paso. And one day, the CO called me in. He says, "I'm sorry." He says, "I'm going to have to send you back to Tucson." That was me and the whole crew. What for? He says, "You didn't finish your training." So I get back to Tucson. And I walked into operations, and I told them, "Back here to finish the training." I said, "What the hell are you doing back here?" He says, "Well, you finished your training." So as far as they were concerned, I was there just as another pilot. And this is what they used. Mm-hmm. They used me as another pilot for the new pilots coming in.
So you're kind of an instructor pilot?
No, not an instructor, just another pilot.
Just another pilot.
Because the new pilots would come in and probably fly as a co-pilot to get a little used to the airplane. Mm-hmm. Because the B-24, you had to get used to it. Uh-huh. Well, I wouldn't like to use the term "used to." You have to be familiar with the flying characteristics.
Did you like it when you first flew it?
I had no objection. I thought it was very good. We used to, and some of our training missions, you get up for a round trip flight or something, we'd buzz the town of Tucson.
I see. So you would fly training missions, like to the West Coast, or?
No, bombing missions.
Bombing missions?
Of course, and instruments, as much as instruments they could give us. That time, instrument wasn't one of the, I don't think, I have to use the term, I don't think it was much of a requirement. Mm. And so mostly it was the bombing missions, and also the climbing and being on oxygen and so on. So
were you actually dropping bombs on bombing ranges?
Not bombs, they were practice bombs. Practice bombs. Mostly at various bombing ranges that they had around that area.
Okay. In fact, isn't there a bombing range here near Albuquerque?
We never got around to this. Albuquerque was just a little town.
So back to your schedule then. So your crew forms up in Tucson. You go to El Paso, and then El Paso sends you back to Tucson because you hadn't completed. So what happened? After
we finished what the system of the training, whatever the training called for, the number of missions for bombing and so on. Because you had to bomb during the daylight, also at nighttime, and the various altitudes. So we finished, and then they sent me. That was after they had sent me back to Tucson. Then they sent us to Salinas, California. What for? I never did find out why, but we were sent there to Salinas and put in cold storage for a while.
Now this is you and your whole crew?
That's correct. And then finally, they reassigned us to back to Biggs Field.
And now they didn't send you back to anywhere?
No, Biggs Field, we went through the system of bombing missions and so on. And then after that, we they formed a provisional group. The first provisional group was, if I remember correctly, was Barnard. And then, of course, after we finished being transferred from Salinas, California, it was a Pomeroy provisional group, and there were 40 crews, and we were assigned to Grand Island, Nebraska, in cold storage again, waiting for assignment. And after they finally the government made up their mind where to send us, we were reassigned to Newport News, Virginia, and 40 crews. And they put us on board His Majesty's ship Andes, a tour ship that had been converted. And we stayed, it took us 7 days to go to Casablanca. We had no convoy, because they figured we were too fast for a submarine. And we landed at Casablanca, and we're there for 40 crews. They had to find a place for us. They put us in a infantry camp there, Camp Don B. Passage, and living in tents, of course. And then after spending a couple weeks there, we were reassigned to Italy by the way of Algiers.
Okay. Now my dad was in the Pomeroy group also, so he went overseas with him. Did you know
yes.
my father?
Yes, he was one of the crews. In fact, I still have the orders that for the whole 40 crews.
Yeah, you took a boat overseas to Casablanca.
That's right.
So going back a little bit, when did they send you up to Grand Island?
That was well. Let's see. You have to go back and figure out the 40 about the early part of 42. We were in training, and then Biggs Field back to Tucson,
right.
Then Tucson to Salinas.
Right.
So I figure about a couple months, I guess. April,
fall?
May or June, something like that.
And when did they send you to Newport? December 43?
No, we got there. I'd say probably around November.
November 43.
Because we hit Italy, San Pan, in around January.
Now, and what squadron? You said the 515?
Well, we landed at the 47th Wing.
47th
and
Wing.
See, the 47th Wing distributed the 40 crews.
I see.
In that area, and I was assigned to 376, 515.
515. So you landed in Casablanca, you said, and then
Yes.
you went to Tunisia, and you sat around in this.
Well, we weren't there in Tunisia very long, just for a reassignment.
But in Casablanca, you were there for a couple of weeks.
Well, I'd say about a couple of weeks,
Okay.
yeah.
And then they sent you up to Barry, or the 47th
No,
Wing.
47th Wing.
47th Wing, and then they sent you to the 376.
That's correct.
And what did you do when you?
Well, when you first landed at the 376, of course, new crews and so on.
Right.
Yet they had a training schedule to go through.
Okay.
And we would to get used to the plane, of course. And one of our missions was over the Gulf of Taranto, and some of the Italians were still firing at us.
Oh, okay.
There was a bombing range over there, and after a certain length of time, which I never paid much attention to, they finished our missions, our training, and then we started on our missions.
And when was your first mission?
Oh, I don't have it.
That's okay.
I don't remember, but
February of 44, something like that?
that was yes. Now this another thing too. At that time, when we were briefed, or entered, or rather, came into the 47th Wing, we were there you served 50 missions. And at that time, after 50 missions, you were sent home on a 30-day leave. And then you come back to the group. And so after I finished my missions in July. My last mission was in Munich. Of course, we hit a lot of the other targets, some of them in northern Italy and southern Germany, and also Romania, Vienna, Wiener Neustadt. All those, I don't have a list in front of me, but they listed all those and the time we spent on each mission. And then, of course, the number of hours you had, the combat hours. And I was fortunate that they sent me back to Tucson because I got more hours in the B-24.
Okay.
So I was more familiar with some of its characteristics. And I'm sure that you probably hear from some people that, well, some of the fellows didn't get that much time. They were, in the States, they were assigned to a B-24. They didn't have many hours in it. And so they were more or less new to it, where I had the advantage. I had a little more hours.
So you had more hours than some of the other quote, new crews.
Of course, and instruments too. We were given instrument training, a lot of them weren't, which was an advantage, because when you some of the weather at Sanpan was we'd get the bad weather. Some of the visibility was bad when you took off, and some of the fellows you never hear again. They had to lose their way or lose the horizon. So anyhow, we finished the 50 missions. And after that, I was reassigned to the States, back to the States. And Colonel Graff was on the same group. We went back by boat. And myself and some of the other individuals, not necessarily my crew, my co-pilot stayed there, and some of the crew did too. They it's funny, they had a committee, evidently, that came down from Washington to brief all the people there waiting to go back to the States. This was outside of Naples. And so everyone was briefed on what they thought about being there and also going back to the States and so on. So we got back to the States. Atlantic City was where we ended up in, and at that time there was a hurricane there, and the hotel we were in, top floor, shaking, water coming in, inundating the cellar of the hotel, and some of the guys were throwing their B-4 bag out the window so they can get out of the hotel. And then we got orders reassigning me to Bryan, Texas. Because evidently, this is only supposition, the meeting or the review that the committee had made with all the men there waiting to go back at Naples changed their mind about sending us back to the C-76.
So you did not have to go back.
No,
after
they
you did your
changed
50 missions.
That's right. They had, that was and some of them. This is what I heard that they were at the beginning, evidently from the 376 in North Africa. I guess there was no 30-day leave. This is just supposition on my part. I don't know, but we were reassigned, and Colonel Graff, in fact, on the board of the ship, he called me in and he said, "Al," he says, "I don't like this ship." He says, "I want you to give me a list of crew. You as a pilot, I'm the senior pilot. I'm the command pilot, and to give me the names of the other crew members that you want, and we'll pick up a B-24 in the States and fly it back."
Because I would say Graff returned to the 3. Okay.
So consequently, when that was great, but then they changed the orders. My orders and everybody else, but Colonel Graff, they didn't. He went back, and he didn't go back by B-24, I don't think. Never heard from him since.
I've never heard from him since.
And of course, down in Bryan, Texas, that was they had just organized a instrument flying school. Colonel Duckworth. I never met him personally, and they were flying AT-6s. Here we're going from a 4-engine plane to a single engine, and naturally you have a tendency to overcorrect. And my instructor pilot, he wouldn't allow us to vary any, in fact, 50 feet, one up or down. He didn't like that. We had to stay right on the needle.
Mm-hmm.
And you stayed there and finished about, maybe a month of instrument training.
And then where did you go?
Then they reassigned me to, let's see, that was Nashville, Tennessee,
Okay.
Smyrna Air Force Base.
Okay.
And then to learn how to fly a B-24 again.
To learn how to fly a B-24
Well,
again?
No, I used that wrong. Instruct in a B-24.
Ah, okay.
And so you stayed there for a while, going through the series of instructions of how to fly the B-24, which naturally I was glad to get that, because I didn't know how to fly a 24.
And was that what you were doing when the war ended?
No, I was after you finished the training there at Nashville, then you were reassigned, and in fact, I was reassigned to Chandler, Arizona, or outside of was it Phoenix, or I think
Chandler, Arizona.
Arizona.
I'm not sure, but
On the way, of course, we took the southern route down through Texas and so on.
now has your wife rejoined you?
No, she didn't join me until after I hit Chandler.
Okay.
And that's where I heard about the president's death.
Oh, so this was like April of 45.
On that trip in Chandler, yeah.
Okay.
And then at Chandler, they decided to, we were flying a B-24, I think it was an AM, I'd never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And after a couple of weeks there, one day they come in and said, you're being sent back to the States, you're being discharged. I didn't want to do that. That's it, you're going. And my wife had just arrived there.
Yes.
So, okay, we had to return to the States, and was discharged at Fort Bliss, I believe it was.
So this is before the war ended?
Yeah.
They discharged you? Okay.
And of course, you still see a lot of us, when we were commissioned, we were either commissioned as a reserve officer or Army of the United States. Mm-hmm. There's a difference. AUS meant that you hold that rank until or either you stay in the service until the end of the war, and then I think 3 months or 6 months afterwards, and then you become a civilian. Whereas I was a reserve officer, so I was reverted to reserve status. So I stayed as a reserve officer, flying. Well, I went back to Glen Martin course and worked for them for a while, and which I didn't like, and because here I am, a captain, and going back to 40 cents an hour.
Was this their plane in Long Island? Is that what?
No, this
Baltimore?
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
And so I would go every weekend. I would go down to Andrews Field and take an AT-6 out, or whatever airplane they had available, and maintain your flying. And then one day, got a notice that we're moving the outfit up to Phillips Field, Aberdeen Proving Ground. A lot of people don't even know where Aberdeen Proving Ground is. That's just north of Baltimore. That's where a lot of our bombing tables were developed. Mm-hmm. And there, they had a replica, not a replica, actually a real plane, B-17, B-20, not a B-24, 25, A-26, all those. And because what they did up there, they would take the plane, put it at the end of the fully conditioned and everything else, running, put it at the end of the runway, and fire on it to see what armament would wipe out destroy the plane. And that's how they developed some of their armament techniques. And of course, we could fly any one of them, which I did, and that's where I flew a B-17. I didn't like it.
Didn't like it?
No.
No.
The first time I got in a B-17 cockpit, here I am sitting here, and all of a sudden I accidentally dropped my maps. They went down to the navigators compartment, or the bombardiers compartment.
Below you?
Below me. I couldn't reach them. No, I didn't like. And not only that, with the B-17, I didn't like the way it flew because it wasn't as fast, and I found it was difficult to use the rudder. Because with that big rudder in the back, or vertical stabilizer, the air pressure kept it, and it was very difficult to move that rudder in flight. So most of the flying of B-17 was aileron. The aileron control on each wing. So consequently, the wing was, of course, it was a little more, it was more stable, it's true, at high altitude because it's a wider wing, but it didn't go as fast. I found it was awkward to fly. So then, after a while, there was a notice that came on the board. Senior pilots, or senior officers, there was an opening for meteorological officers, forecasters. So I thought, here was my chance to get back in, because after I didn't want to get out, but that's the way the orders read. So I would be going every weekend to Washington to see if they were taken back in the service. And of course, the terminology says, we're not hiring, we're firing. That was right after WW2, see. So the ending of the war. So the article said for meteorological officers. And so I applied for it, it was accepted, and they ordered me back in the service at the air base right south of Chicago, one of the oldest bases we had, if I understand the service. And spent some time there in meteorology.
So now you're back in the Air
service.
Was you a captain now?
I was still a captain.
Still a captain.
And then reassignment back to. In fact, at that time, they wanted meteorology forecasters. So the general said, we'll send you wherever you want. That was great. That's Aberdeen Proving Ground. That's the Phillips Field. And his aide came back after a while, and he says, I'm sorry. He says, they don't authorize a captain there. I told him, I said, well, that's not my problem. So a little while later, came back and says, okay. He says, you can go. Aberdeen Proving Ground, Phillips Field. So I reported to Phillips Field, and we had a small unit there. They to fly those planes that were up there for demolition, I guess, or target practice. And then after a while, some officer we were working 4 or 5 days a week, from 8 in the morning to about 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. Because after all, it was just a weekly arrangement, or that's the way the weather service worked at that time.
Now, were you allowed to keep up your flying
Oh yes.
status?
And then we got a visit from. We were under Mitchell Field, I believe. We got a visit from one of the officers there, and he says, heck, he says, you can't do this. He says, you've got to work 7 days a week. You've got to operate this unit 7 days a week. And I said, well, I don't have the men. He says, well, that's your problem. So we formed what they call a corollary unit. In other words, we advertised, in fact, I got on the phone, called all the forecasters that were out of the service, that were in the service at one time, and asked them if they would like to forecast over the weekend. And they would get paid being in the reserve. They'd love it. And so that's how we continued, and we formed a corollary unit. It's the same, in other words, a corollary unit is the same as your original unit.
Right.
And so then one day, they wanted men. They were discharging people from the service, and so I thought, well, I better take another look at this. So they wanted people or meteorologists to maintain the weather equipment. So I applied for that, and they sent us down to Tyndall Field to Keesler Air Force Base to learn how to maintain weather equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, my first assignment was Korea.
Korea. So you went over to Korea as a weather person?
That's right. And I had a weather unit over there outside of Kimpo. Ravenson unit, they call it. Ravenson is a unit that has, they release a transmitter on a balloon.
Mm-hmm.
And that transmits your temperature, humidity, and pressure to a unit that down on the ground receives it, and then of course that is put into some sort of language that a person on the ground could read it.
Great.
And then that lasted for a while, and then that was actually remote, so consequently that lasted for about almost a year, and they transferred me to Nagoya, or rather Itazuki, Kyushu Air Force Base.
So did you ultimately retire then from the Air Force?
Not then. Not then.
I mean, later on.
Later on.
Later on. So so you had a career in the Air Force then?
That's great. I retired in February 65, 1965.
Well, going back earlier to your time when you were with the 376, you had mentioned earlier that your plane was the round trip Harry.
That's correct.
Did you fly it all the time, most of the time?
Well, not all the time. Most of the missions, yes, but there were one or two missions that they assign another plane.
Sure. What was your what was the most difficult target that you would say, or most?
That's hard for me to decide,
say.
because I know I've got that question asked many times. Because another fellow of mine the same way. We try to fly as close formation as possible without colliding, and so consequently, I was busy flying formation close. We didn't fly 50 feet out, 50 feet back, like they instructed in the States, because the Germans would not, or they avoided attacking a group with very close formation because there's a lot of firepower coming at them.
That would make sense.
So we prided ourselves on what we could,
formation?
How close we could fly.
Ah, well, that's good. So you're busy flying the airplane and letting the other crew members do their job?
That's correct. The gunners doing their job, and I was lucky. We only lost an engine at one time, one of our missions, that's all. Well, got 3 more engines.
Okay.
Didn't bother me. And
by the way, did you fall out of formation when you lost your one engine? Were you able to keep up?
No, sir. No, all you had to do is increase the power.
Increase the power. Did any of your gunners become? Did they shoot down?
Well, my engineer was operating the top turret gunner on one of these missions. I had forgotten which one it was, and I had called my bombardier and I said, "Get up here and come up here and take a look at my engineer." And so he did. He was okay. He had a helmet on, and so he got back into to the top turret and continued to operate it as if it was okay.
Yeah.
So that was the only casualty I had.
But he was injured. He wasn't killed.
No, it was very minor injury.
Very minor.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was wearing a steel helmet. They all were supposed to. Every time you heard there were fighters, you put your helmet on.
Now, were there? I remember looking at some of the mission planning documents. There were places they would mark on the map and say there was lots of German artillery or anti-aircraft. Did you route your planes around those areas?
Well, as much as possible. I think my last mission was over Munich, and we were briefed then. There was a lot of anti-aircraft around Munich, except one little spot, and so I was leading the particular group, not the entire group, but one portion, one element, I guess. And as the one officer was flying on my wing, I said to him, Frenchie, I said, could you follow me? I said, because after we drop the bombs, I'm making a 90-degree turn.
Okay.
He said, I'll be with you. So sure as hell, he stayed with me.
Stayed with you.
We dropped the bombs 90 degrees off and losing altitude.
Ah.
So he came back and fuel and everything else, no problem.
Now, was this CL French? Was that Frenchie?
I don't know what CL. I don't know his
I'm
initials.
trying to remember. I remember there was a French. His last name was French in the 515.
It probably was that.
Okay.
And his co-pilot was Donald Stone.
Okay. He became a pilot, I believe.
Well, Donald's still alive.
Oh, okay.
He lives up in northern New York. Once in a while he gives me a call, but he's replaced both hips, knees, and he's on crutches, but he's still alive.
Is he a member of the association?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
But of course of his injuries, he don't come.
Do you still maintain contact with your crew? Or did you make contact after the war? Or?
Tried to. My bombardier did not, it seemed like he didn't feel like maintaining contact. And as far as I know, he's still alive. And the only other one left in the crew was one of my waist gunners, and he lives in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
And he's not, he used to come, all reunions, but he's had a little health problem, so he's not making it.
Okay. Did you ever, my dad remembers commenting about being attacked by Me-262s, the German. Did you ever see a 262?
I heard this from one of the crew members.
Oh, really? But you never saw it?
I never saw it. Hell, I couldn't
because
I didn't have time.
The comment was, boy, that was a fast plane that just flew past
right.
us.
But no, that's the only thing I know about it.
Okay. Another thing I remember people talking about is that early on in their missions, there were a lot of German fighters, but as the war progressed, the number of fighters they ran into decreased.
Well, that's true. There again, that question has been asked me many times. I didn't have time to look around.
Flying. Okay.
In order to maintain your formation, it was you had to go ahead and keep your attention, concentrate on the keeping formation. Of course, some of the other there are some other planes in our group that didn't maintain it. As when I heard a comment from my radio operator, he kept hollering about, "Oh, this plane is going to crash into you." So I had to get on the phone and tell him, "Pay attention. I'll fly the plane. You pay attention outside." And I called the crew, the plane that was giving me this problem, and I told him, I said to maintain his flying, and he says, came back, "My co-pilot fly, he not fly so good." That was the terminology that I got.
Now, I'm assuming that when you were flying from the base towards the target, you weren't always in close formation. There was
well.
At what point did you close up? And
usually when we finally assembled, yes, I stayed with that.
Really?
What you see, I find it was easier because the closer you are to another plane, you can always see when they make a motion, or rather a variation. Whereas if further away, there's more time involved then between the reaction. Mm-hmm. Your reaction is faster. And maybe a lot of people don't know that, but if you're flying and you see the plane move, you're immediately, and there's only a few seconds.
So you tried to fly close formation as much as possible.
I found it was easier.
Is that also true after you came off the target and were flying back home?
No, we got a little looser.
Looser? Okay.
And not only that, you were lucky if any of the planes were with you.
Now, when the group was approaching a target, did you line up by squadrons, or how do?
No, that's a good question. I can't answer that.
Okay. But
we just followed the group.
The group lead.
Well, the bombardier was on the bomb site, and he was the one that steered the plane over the target.
Now, the 376 would also fly with other groups, like the 98th and the 450th.
Yes, and I can't comment about that.
Never did see flying the plane again. Yeah.
Well, isn't that I didn't see much of the other groups.
Oh, didn't? Oh, okay.
Because there's a lot of the distance involved.
Distance, okay.
So I was lucky, I guess.
Well, how was life like in Italy when you weren't flying missions? Did you enjoy Italy?
The little
Can I
bit we.
just interrupt 1 second? If we could probably get one more question out of him, or two more, then I need to do a little resetting up. We're gonna do more interviews in another room, but I need to reorganize.
Okay.
Did you enjoy Italy, or what did you think of Italy?
Yes, we traveled around a little bit, but I did most of the traveling around after the war.
After the war.
Yeah, but I forgot we visited one of the castles there. I've forgotten the name of it.
Did you go to Capri on R&R?
Oh, yes, we went to Capri. And that's where I found out that on one of our missions, that I happened to talk to an officer who was on the boat going to Capri. And he says, yeah, he says, you bastards went ahead and trapped, you dropped on us. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, this one mission. He said, I knew that you were coming in. He said, and I heard the bombs dropping, so I walked to the front of the operations. He says, and explosion blew me back. Evidently, we were dropping that close to to our lines that this happened. So this happened also, and all the bombing of Casino the same way.
Were you involved in the bombing of Monte Cassino?
Well, they never did bomb the
Abbey?
The Abbey, no. It was the town of Casino.
Oh, town of Cassino. Okay.
And that's all I can say. That yes, we did. We were on those missions.
Okay. You were
And also Anzio.
in Anzio? Yes,
Yeah.
you did. I remember the group doing support missions to Anzio. Okay, so going back, you left the Air Force. You said in what, 65 or something?
Yeah.
65. And what did you
65.
do? 65. And what did you do after that?
And I went to work for Fairchild Republic. You ever hear of them?
Yes.
And we worked on the space shuttle.
Oh, okay.
See, my mission on the space shuttle was to the government gave a contract for 5 space shuttles, but only 1 shuttle a year. And so Fairchild was responsibility to build the tail. And so my job was to write the procedure of dismantling or various parts of the tail after so many missions in outer space. And I had to review this because the engineers, when they put something together, you don't think about taking it apart. So I had to go ahead and review that, all the drawings, and to come over my desk and see, can you get to this? Can you get to that? And of course, you were given so much time by the government to do this. And of course, you had to consider that a mechanic would have all his tools right there. And so sometimes you couldn't go ahead and dismantle it. I'd have to go to the engineers, tell them you have to redesign it.
Okay.
So then, and then of course we had to ship it to California because Rockwell International was the major contractor. And we had to wrap it in some sort of material. So I was going to use PVC, I guess, which naturally everybody wanted to, but they would not accept that. But why? PVC is corrosive. I didn't know that. In fact, we called the scientists, I called Rockwell, and they said, you have to talk to the scientist. So I called him, and he says, because it's corrosive. Anything going in outer space is not going to touch it because it's corrosive. So I had to look around. We finally got nylon to cover the whole tail, shipping it out. See, Grumman got the contract for the wings, and Fairchild got the contract for the tail. And I had to write all that business. And then, of course, the A-10, I had to go ahead and write all the maintenance equipment to maintain the A-10. Had to look through all the government documents. What equipment does the government have to maintain that plane? And if they didn't have the proper equipment, we had to go ahead and order it be made.
Okay.
And of course, then we had to assign it. Now, the A-10 was assigned, one of the first, as far as I know, first airline aircraft assigned to reserves. And they assigned various places around the country, one of which was down in New Orleans. Had to make a trip down there and tell them how to maintain it. Also up to Minneapolis, someplace up there.
Mm.
And I think they did have them. They have the A-10s over at Connecticut, in Hartford.
Right.
And then I also was on the Gatling gun that the A-10 carries.
And gun.
Yeah. And you had to write a procedure about that. And so, see, I became a technical writer. And I had to visit the General Motors, or General Electric rather, up in Vermont, I think is where they were making the Gatling gun, and talk to the engineers.
I've heard the A-10 was the only plane that was designed around the gun. They had the gun and they designed the airplane around it.
That's correct. Well, they had the metal casket, I guess you could call it, that the pilots sat in.
Set in.
It was not impervious to ground fare, but it because of the armament, it was very good for close air. Well, it was a close air support aircraft.
Was that in a tank?
That's right, and it was very good for that. But the training, you see, the training in the A-10 was a single seater, and the instructor would be flying along with a pilot and instructed him in flying the A-10 on target. And naturally, it's close air support. You're down on the ground, and lots of times you have target fixation.
Mm.
It was flying, watch its target. First thing is into the ground.
Mm.
So they, well, Fairchild built a two-seater, but the government wouldn't buy it.
Wouldn't buy it.
No,
So training was basically by yourself.
that's correct. But the A-10 was a good aircraft. Of course, the Air Force did. I don't think the Air Force cared too much for it.
Well, Air Force either wants to be bomber jockeys or fighter jockeys.
Well, I guess that didn't.
I worked on the F-15. I understand the fighter mentality.
I can't argue that point. Of course, up in Alaska, they used 102s, I think.
Oh yeah, well yeah, early on.
See, I was stationed up there for a while.
In Alaska,
Yeah.
Elmendorf?
No, I was, my assignment was commander of Middleton Island.
Where the heck is Middleton Island?
That's 170 miles south of Anchorage in the Gulf.
In the Gulf? So was it out on the,
Shemya and Adak and all those
Yeah,
places.
yeah.
That's the chain, yeah.
yeah. So was it out there or?
Well, Middleton Island was we had a radar station there. In those days, you see, we had radars all over the country, and up in Alaska, and around the the Canadian border.
Now, was this part of the Dewey system? Was it the Dewey system, the early warning system?
That's right, part of the
Okay.
early warning system. And I was sent just down in Middleton Island. We had about 140 people, and there was only one civilian family there, and they were there because it was a transmitting station for aircraft.
Now, did your wife follow you around, or
No.
did she stay back?
No, she went up to she went up to Alaska with me, but that was before Alaska was a state,
Okay.
and the only way she'd go up is a tourist.
As a tourist.
Oh yeah, they couldn't keep. See, the government would not pay for her to go up with me.
So
but
she
as
was
a
your
tourist-
family that she couldn't.
But as a tourist, see, they couldn't keep her out.
Oh, okay.
And
I
then-
see. Okay.
And then after I arrived, it became a state.
Okay.
And
So did she have? So she was an illegal alien, so to speak.
my assignment was considered remote,
Okay.
and that's good for about a year.
Okay.
And let's say I was commander of that island.
Okay.
No, it's not bad.
Well, I think we're running out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to say about your service on the 376?
I'm still alive.
Well, thank you for your service and for your interview.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Okay.